just waiting for a quorum of public facility members to join us. And looks like we have it now. So my name's Allison Leary, City Councilor at Large from Ward 1 and Chair of the committee. And joining me at the beginning of the meeting, I see we have Councilor Andrea Kelly at Large from Ward 3, Councilor Mark Laredo at Large from Ward 7, and Councilor Deb Crossley at Large from Ward 5. We're also joined by our committee clerk, Cassidy Flynn, and the Commissioner of Public Works, Jim McGonigal, the Deputy Commissioner, Shauna Sullivan, our engineer, John Daglian, and Josh Ostroff, from the Planning Department, our Director of Transportation. I know at least one councilor will not be joining us tonight, who's attending an item in Programs and Services. I see we're also joined by Councilor Lenny Gentile at Large from Ward 4. So without further ado, and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us, including members of the public who are here this evening. Without further ado, we can start with the first item. This is a public hearing. It's item 133-23. It's a grant of location in Parker Avenue, and Miss Mary Mulroney from National Grid will introduce the item.
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
National Grid respectfully requests your consent of a grant as part of the cast iron main replacement program mandated by the DPU to prioritize and replace approximately 85 feet of 6-inch plastic dating back to 2006, approximately 1,080 feet of 6-inch cast iron with approximately 1,165 feet of 8-inch plastic in Oakdale Road from Woodcliff Road to Walnut Hill Road, and replace 790 feet of 6-inch cast iron dating back from 1926, 1929, and 1933 with approximately 330 feet of 4-inch cast iron from 1931 and approximately 250 feet of 4-inch coated steel from 1951, approximately 210 feet of 6-inch bare steel dating back to 1946, and approximately 20 feet of 6-inch plastic from 2007, with a total replacement of 1,600 feet of approximately 715 feet of 8-inch plastic in Parker Ave from Woodcliff Road to Parker Street. And then we're going to approximately replace 715 feet of 4-inch bare steel dating back from 1935 with approximately 715 feet of 6-inch plastic in Kendall Road and approximately 165 feet of 8-inch cast iron from 1927 and approximately 385 feet of 6-inch cast iron from 1927 with approximately 550 feet of 8-inch plastic in Walnut Hill Road from number 16 Walnut Hill Road to number 67. This is walkable to the high school, and if it was granted, it possibly could work out that work could be done over summer vacation and it wouldn't interfere with the students.
Thank you, Ms. Mulroney. Yeah, I did go over there and take a look earlier this afternoon. So we have a few standard questions that we usually ask, including like, are these pipes leaking? Do you have those questions?
Yes, I do. There are leaks on the pipes. Right at this present time, we have 2 leaks, one at 121 Parker Ave, and the other leak is at Kendall Road in Walnut Hill.
What grade are those leaks? Do you know?
Yes, I do. Those are grade 3 leaks.
Grade 3, okay. Do you have, there were other questions on there. Do you have the list?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to just go through them?
Sure. What's the first question you want to start with?
Well, I started with the leaks and then the number of people that are there any new?
No, there's no new services being hooked up that we know of. Nope, it's just for public safety, just putting down the new main so that it's everybody's, stays safe and but no new customers. And you have a question about, I don't know if you still have the same question about, because we talked about it before, why we're doing it, like lining versus
Yeah,
installing.
we have been asking that question, but we got the same answer every time. So,
Well, this might help you a little.
okay.
I don't know if it will or not, if it will satisfy you. So we're regulated by the DPU, and we have to go in and fix leak-prone pipe. And we prioritize that with history and whatnot of what pipe National Grid needs to do. Lining is not a viable option for the small diameter of cast iron main from either a cost or a construction logistics perspective, because the existing configuration of the gas main has a high concentration of service laterals, and that would prohibit a system shutdown that would be required if we were lining the main. So in this particular project, there's approximately 108 houses, could be a little more, could be a little less, that would be off of the grid for weeks if there was a lining. And National Grid does not line any pipe under 16-inch in diameter for that reason. Like you'd be taking neighborhoods out of service.
Okay. I'm going to see if there's any questions from the committee. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'm going to, tonight, I'm going to limit comment to 3 minutes. So if there's any member of the public that wish to speak, please raise your hand. And you can go down to reactions and click on raise hand, or you can wave in front of you can wave in the camera and we'll. Okay, I see Mr. Nathan Phillips. Mr. Phillips, could you just state your address, please?
Yeah, Nathan Phillips, 73 Charles Street in Auburndale. And I'm here at the intersection where the gas explosion of April 6th, 2023 happened. The sound that you hear is an alarm. This is a National Grid drill hole that this probe is in. And right now we're about maybe 60 or 75 feet from where the explosion occurred, where that car just went by. And what we're reading here is combustible gas. It's 27% gas, 28% gas, just a few inches below this soil surface. 31, that would be 330,000 parts per million gas. So this remains a dangerous situation, and I think that the priority must be on addressing a situation like this. And so I'm calling for a DPU investigation of the Walnut Street gas explosion, and I think our priorities need to be on safety rather than these lower priority areas that are being asked for. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Phillips. I agree that Walnut Street has been a real problem. I've been out there myself several times, including with you. And it is still, there's still a lot of gas leaking out there. I am concerned about it. But right now we have a different grant of location in front of us. And I have called the emergency line about that, about Walnut Street. And when I was bicycling around today, I did see another van, an NGrid van on site there. But thank you very much.
Yeah, and just so you know, I'm going to call this leak in right now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak? I think we're all talked out on these grants of location. Okay, this is in Ward 8. I guess I would see if there's a motion.
Counselor, you just have to close the public hearing.
Oh, yes, thank you, Cassidy. Yes. I'd like to make, sorry.
There's another.
Oh, there's
person
one more
raising her
speaker
hand.
before I close here. Lori Ball, please state your address.
Thank you. 119 Oakdale Road. So I just want to ask, I guess, Mary, so when is the decision going to be made about the timing on Oakdale Road?
Well, the process is National Grid petitions the city council for approval for a grant of location. And it's, to let them know and their constituents know that that there's work going to be done in the area, and that the police will be there and residents will be able to come and go, and the scope of the job. And then once the grant is approved by the city council, National Grid then goes and applies for a permit through the Newton Public Works, and they review, they hold National Grid to a high standard, like what needs to be done with the whole scope of the project. They have their team of engineers on it, and then work with the permit and National Grid scheduling. We work together and we go out and start the project.
So is it realistic to think that that's going to happen in time to do it for the summer?
I would think if the grant was approved, that there's a good possible chance of that the permit would be applied for, National Grid would get it on the schedule, and it would be done.
Okay. I mean, I saw what happened on when they did it on Woodcliff. It's a production.
Oh, yes, it's a lot of work. Yes.
It's a lot, but okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ball. Okay, is there any, I'm not seeing any other member of the public with their hand raised. I will get to you, Councillor Crossley, in just a minute. So I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Gentile. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Councillor Crossley.
Thanks. This is a very large area, and it is a route to, as we all know, several schools. So I'm wondering about communication, and I wonder if the department can speak to that and requiring National Grid to alert people and that sort of thing. We had a complex area in Upper Falls last year, and it was very helpful to be working with Kim Ritchie and requiring certain notification of the residents, but also a question. So this is kind of two parts. One is, how do we propose to manage this area and communications? And the other is, it's such an extensive area. Can it really be done off school season? Can it really be done in 2 months over the summer? Because it would be pretty awful to disrupt the entire fall, with the streets torn apart.
I agree. Mr. Daglian is here. He might be the best person to answer that question. Mr. Daglian, are you available?
Yes, so what we will do, we'll have a pre-construction meeting with National Grid and their subcontractor. And 2 weeks prior to any construction, they'll notify the entire neighborhood. They'll have adequate police details throughout every phase of construction, and our inspector, Kim Ritchie, will be working with them. And we also have an outreach program with NGrid that we've developed so that the scope of work is pretty well detailed out and what they can expect, and we're planning for details during a daily basis. And if they have a sufficient crews, which they should, I believe they should be able to get this done during the summer months before school starts.
Thank you, Mr. Daglian. Are there any other questions from the committee? Councillor Crossley, are you satisfied with that response?
Yes, just want to make sure it happens that way. So, if
Right.
if if the time lags and they're not able to start till the end of the summer, I would suggest we all get notified and perhaps pursue a different time frame. This is not an emergency. So it would be best to schedule this carefully so the work could begin at the beginning of summer season.
Yes, there's only two grade grade 3 leaks there, so it's not an emergency. Counselor Bowman.
Thank you. Tuned in just in time because I had that question as well. So one other question is, and maybe I missed this minutes earlier, the section that's going to be going from Woodcliff Road to Parker Street on Parker Ave, is it actually going to go into Parker Street? Because of course that was just repaved and we put in bike lanes.
I don't have the map right in front of me.
I don't believe so. I believe it's just on Parker Ave.
So stopping before you get to the corner,
Pardon?
stopping before you go into the roadway.
Yes, yes.
Okay, because I have not been impressed, probably any place that there's been work done, that it's of the quality that, doesn't create an issue, especially for a bicycle. And this is a key bike corridor for children. So I'd love to just, students getting to school and others, I'd love to just make sure it's not only when it's done, but, the settling that happens later, that it's taken care of, because it's very frustrating to have, the level of tolerance for bicycles different than for a car. So I'd just like to make sure it's nice and smooth. So that's it. Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Bowman, I have the map up now. It does stop at the where Parker Ave hits Parker Street is the end of it. So it does not go into Parker Street. And it also is at Kendall Street, but Kendall Road before it hits Parker Street. So it's really kept to the side streets. There's no main thoroughfares are involved at this point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing, by the way, is this in Ward 6, this work?
Yes.
It is in Ward,
Yes.
okay. Okay. So I have not seen any other hands up from the committee. So is there a motion to approve?
I'll approve after this comment because it does go into Parker Street.
Oh, it
Right.
does?
And
Looked like it stopped.
I know or it's on the sidewalks, but either way, it's not a significant amount of Parker Street, but I just want Ms. Bowman to know that, Councilor Bowman to know that,
Okay.
but I'll move it.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, it's approved. Thank you very much, Ms. Mulroney.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Now our next item is, I think, kind of a highlight of the evening or of the year for many of us on public facilities. We enjoy seeing Mr. Ledger once a year. I'm sorry. We're doing the Transportation Network Improvement Plan, right? Next, 1/18/23, and I believe that's Mr. Ledger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll kick it off. First, I'll
Okay.
apologize. I've been losing my voice all day, so luckily we do have Conrad here. And Sean is here also. Yes, we do come to you every year about this time to discuss our Transportation Network Improvement Program. That does include our street paving, maintenance and rehabilitation, the sidewalk repairs and installs, pavement markings, traffic calming, minor intersection improvements, and parking lot repairs and compliance. So Conrad's gonna have a presentation for us. We ask that you let us go through the presentation because it may answer some of your questions as we go through. And then we'll have plenty of time after. We can go back to any slides you'd like. And we will try to answer any questions you have following the presentation. Conrad?
Tim, and thank you, Madam Chair. Very nice to be back again. Hard to believe, but I believe this is the 6th time I've been in front of the Public Facilities Committee. So happy to provide an update for you today. So I'm going to start high level. I'm going to talk about what the program is, what the intent of it is, provide you the work history of what's been done so far, and some of the things that we have upcoming and some of the new additions that we have in the program that we've added since the inception of the program. So with that, the program goals really focus around the public infrastructure of the roadways and sidewalks, and creating a improved level of service on the roadways and the sidewalks. The goal is to accommodate all users, regardless of age, ability, income, or preferred modes of transportation. So looking at the network as holistically, rather than just looking at it for one particular mode of user. And what we do is we collect data to provide guidance to select the most cost beneficial ways of either repairing or preserving the road network as a whole. So I'm going to hit on some program history. I know everybody's always anxious to see kind of what was completed last year, and we continue to see improvements. So this is the paving work history of what was completed so far in the program. Again, this goes all the way back to 2017 when this was a big initiative. So on the map on the right-hand side, it shows all of the streets that had major work done to them. And that map does not include treatments such as crack sealing and fog sealing. It just would populate too much of the map. So you can see that the work started in 2017 and 2018. I believe it was the fall of 2017 that we really started work. And we've been tracking it on a yearly basis since. So in 2022, we actually were able to hit about 11.5 miles of roadway. And the program totals are about 69 miles of roadway, and there's sidewalk work that goes along with that. So in terms of the sidewalk, the curb ramps and curb ramps as well, I did include this history here as well. So as you might remember, but anytime we do any minor or major rehabilitation to a roadway, we do make sure that we make the sidewalks and curb ramps accessible as part of that process. So far in the program, last year was a little bit of a shorter year in terms of how many sidewalk and curb ramps got done, but that tends to fluctuate on a year-by-year basis depending on what projects are up next for the program. So next I want to talk, and I know this was a topic that we touched on briefly at last year's update, but I want to give an update on where we're at with the pedestrian infrastructure network and the inventory that we recently completed. So as we introduced last year, we were in the process of completing this as I did the update last year. But Mike Jaffet, who is a city worker who has helped us complete the majority of this work with some training, and hats off to him. He spent a lot of time on the sidewalks and curb ramps in Newton collecting this information. So it was all collected utilizing an existing system that the city has obtained, which is their asset management software through People GIS. And Mike, with very little training and guidance, was able to collect sidewalks, so material type, condition, and maintenance locations that needed to be performed. And then also he performed a full curb ramp inventory, collecting material type, condition of each curb ramp, the ramp type, and whether or not ramps had detectable warning panels, as that's part of the ADA and AAB compliance. So in terms of overall condition, he rated each of the sidewalk segments, and that's generally from intersection to intersection is where we broke those up. And he rated them in general categories: excellent, good, fair, poor, and replace. And you can see kind of some examples of those on the right-hand side of the screen. And then similarly did the same exact thing for the curb ramps. A little bit different in terms of how we rate those, but it's generally on a good, fair, poor rating system for the general condition. So in terms of what was collected and what the final evaluation shows is that there are approximately 420 miles of sidewalk infrastructure that were mapped. And he collected that information in that rating system. 41% of the sidewalk network was found to be in excellent or good condition. 48% was in fair condition, and then in poor condition was 11%. Just to give you some, I guess, a guide here, the city's road miles is 287 miles. So there's actually a quite amount more sidewalk miles than there is of roadway in the city, just because there's sidewalk on many of the roadways on both sides of the road. In terms of the curb ramp inventory, he collected information on 5,200 curb ramps. This is a substantial network of sidewalks and curb ramps. And actually, similar to the rating of the sidewalks, they were found to be in excellent or good condition, 57%, fair condition, 39%, and then poor condition, 4%. And we also did identify where potential new ramps could be added. So the guidance that we gave to Mike when he was doing this inventory was looking at where sidewalks hit intersections and there was no ramp there or a ramp opening to be able to access the sidewalk. Now, we say that this is potential ramp locations because some locations wouldn't require a ramp because there's another way to access that sidewalk, or a ramp simply won't be able to fit because of right-of-way. So we always put a potential tag on that, but all of those are mapped all over the city with points. So in terms of moving forward on the sidewalks and curb ramps, I wanted to talk a little bit about the prioritization. For those of you who were on the call last year, you might remember that we had those beautiful heat maps that kind of showed where pedestrian activity is. And we're going to continue to use those in the prioritization. But we're hearing loud and clear that one of the priorities in the city is around schools and the safety around schools and being able to access schools. So you can see on the right-hand side here, we've created buffer maps around each of the schools. And I'll show a little bit more detail about what that allows us to do moving forward in terms of prioritizing and understanding what type of work needs to be done on each school. We also use roadway classification too, just because they're major connection points on minor and major arterial roadways, collectors compared to local roadways. So we're helping that with we're going to use that in terms of prioritization. And then we're also looking at the safe routes to school mapping that the city currently has. Specifically looking at the previously established plow routes for sidewalks and prioritizing those as main walking points as they were identified as part of the Safe Routes to School initiative. And then obviously we're going to use a lot of the data that was collected by Mike in the assessment, condition data, whether or not a sidewalk or curb ramp is in compliance, and then utilizing those heat maps as well. So with that, we're going to I'm going to show you an example of 3 of the schools. These schools were actually on the city's capital plan. So Ward School, Underwood School, and Williams School. And what we did was we drew these buffer maps around the school. I believe they're a quarter-mile buffers around each school. And what that gives us is an understanding of where the most likely pedestrian activity is going to happen due to the school itself. Logically, where people are likely walking to and from school. So we have each of those for each of these schools right now. The red is the condition in terms of being in poor condition within these buffers. Yellow is sidewalk segments that were found to be in fair condition. And then the greens are actually the ones that are in good condition. Again, we have this for the sidewalk and the curb ramps. So this is a map showing which sidewalks and segments should be repaired based on the analysis. So for each of these schools, what we did is we focused on sidewalks that were either in fair or poor condition, and the same with curb ramps as well. And we also looked at the accessibility of the curb ramps to make sure that they were likely in compliance, tell us whether or not they likely had to be replaced. So this is a planning level look of what needs to be done in each of these school locations. The next slide kind of summarizes that in numbers. So you can see for the Ward School, for instance, the priority sidewalk is 2.27 miles. Overall, within that school buffer, there's 9.13 miles. So about 25% of that sidewalk network within that buffer needs to be replaced. Similarly, with the curb ramps, there's 33 that we found that needs to be replaced, with a total number within that buffer of 76. About 43% of the curb ramps needs to be replaced. And we were able to identify or come up with planning level cost estimates to be able to do that work. And this is a great example of how every school is going to be very different in terms of the work that needs to be completed. So you can see from left to right, Ward School needs about $800,000 worth of work on their sidewalk network. The Underwood School needs about $360,000 of work, and then Williams School needs about $178,000. And moving forward, we're going to prioritize these based on the worst schools, meaning in terms of condition and the need around the schools, and trying to knock those out in that order. But again, that's some of the discussions that we're still having in terms of setting up the CIP for future years. So next, I'm going to give a high-level overview of where we're at with the roadway network as well. And again, I'll be happy to go back to any of these slides or any of these graphics if anybody has any specific questions about them. But I know many of you on this call have seen the roadway network presentation a couple times, so we kind of brought this back a little bit and allow us to kind of add in some of the sidewalk information, not make it too lengthy. But the overall current PCI on the road network is 72.56. The program began, I believe, right around 62. So you can see we're continuing to make progress there. All of the numbers that I'm showing you today are based on the inspections that we did this past season in October of 2022. And again, 74 centerline miles of roadway, approximately 50% are still in need of some sort of rehabilitation, and approximately 25% of the road network is actually in good or very good condition. So just to remind everybody, some of the things that we go through or the yearly process that we go through is we don't just look at the roadway conditions. We look at a number of different things that need to be done to each of these roadways. First, we look at the budget and we distribute how much money should be allocated towards each of the different treatments. And we try to put a specific number into each category based on the roadway ratings. So then we look at the existing conditions themselves. We take a look at the Complete Streets initiatives. Does a particular street need sidewalks or ADA accessibility or bike accommodations? We look at the community needs and what needs to be done there. We also have that data-driven analysis that guides us to where we should be looking and getting the most benefit for the money that we're spending. So that's that cost-benefit value, very valuable tool for us in prioritizing which roads to tackle first. And then what always throws us for a loop every year is all the underground infrastructure and what comes up there. So we make sure that we check off that the water system is in good shape, that any repairs are made ahead of time with sewer, and also other utility upgrades that are underground. So we typically start this process. We have a kind of a master list that we go off of on a yearly basis, but we usually start checking the following year's roadways for utility or complete street needs in late summer, early fall of the year before construction. So that typically takes us a couple months to get through to be able to vet all those out and make sure that we're clear to be able to do that work in the following construction season. So in terms of the work that's planned for 2023, I broke this up into 3 or 4 different slides so that we can explain it. These are the major paving projects that we're looking at, and there is some preservation on here as well. So in terms of the streets that we're looking at, I'm not going to read through each one. The map on the right-hand side is broken down by each of the categories, but we have BWC and a SAMI, which is a curb-to-curb overlay, and we've used that for the past 4 or 5 years now. Strict bond and wearing course, which is one of the 2 processes in the first one. the maintenance overlays, which is a curb-to-curb asphalt overlay, and then mill and overlay, and that's where we're grinding up the existing roadway, doing all the sidewalk repairs and things like that. One of the other things that I added here this year, in conjunction with Jason and the engineering department, is we wanted to add in here the intersection and traffic calming projects that are also taking place. So we've identified those on the map, and I have a slide for those as well. As I like to say every year, this is a living document. So as you know, some of the underground utility work pops up in part of the planning process, some streets can get pushed forward. And that's usually the reason that we have to push a street from a year that is planned to a future year. But we actually track that on a yearly basis to make sure that we're keeping those roads on the list if they were on the list initially, even if they have to slide to the following year. This list is also not exhaustive at this point because we're going to be adding preservation techniques such as routine maintenance with crack seal, some fog sealing, or some curb-to-curb treatments meant to preserve the roadways and the investments that the city's made in the roadways already. So the second category here, this is pretty substantial this year compared to past years. It's the maintenance overlays, and this is looking at roadways that are in poor condition and making sure that we're doing a curb-to-curb overlay here. That is the red that you see on the map on the right-hand side. Pretty substantial program this year. And then the traffic calming locations. I listed just a few of the intersections that we're planning to tackle this year. Not going to read through all of them, but it's there for your review and your consumption as well. So in terms of an overview of what the program looks like this year, we're planning to do a lot of work, which is always a good thing, but is also challenge. It comes with its challenges as well. So we're looking at approximately 17 miles of roadway just off the list that I provided. And usually on a year-over-year basis, crack sealing adds a substantial amount as well. So we can, I guess, we can anticipate that this mileage is probably going to go up by somewhere in between 5 and 8 miles once we add in the crack sealing. And we'll also be adding in some other preservation treatments as well. So it'll be a very busy year in the city, along with all the other things that go on. But it's good to see that this program is continuing to thrive and continuing to make progress. The next steps, I add this in every year, but you know, we're going to continue to update the database with the construction history. We just did pavement inspections last year, which we've been on an every other year cycle to do. This allows us really easily to identify those preservation, the candidates for preservation, and allows us to really kind of preserve the roadways that are in good shape so that they don't fall into a state of disrepair very quickly, kind of prolongs the life of that road network. And, you know, on a yearly basis, we're going through, we're doing our updates of the database. We're revising our capital plan based on those different criteria that I showed earlier in the slide, looking at putting out new bids and making sure that we're staying current on our bids when we need to, and making sure that we're getting competitive prices here in the city. And I think we've done a good job of that. This year was a substantial year for putting out new bid documents because they were not able to be renewed and they really needed to be refreshed. And then we're doing our yearly construction, making sure we're doing our QA/QC on the construction, and then we kind of go through that same cycle again. So it's been great to see the progress in the city. I think everybody that drives, especially the main roads in the city, you can see that we're really starting to make some significant progress. And now we're starting to peck away at a lot of those neighborhood roads to make sure that those are getting treatments that they deserve as well. So with that, I'll take any questions. And again, I can pop up the presentation at any point to go back to any slides if anybody has any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ledger, for that presentation. It was very comprehensive. We always enjoy seeing you once a year.
I enjoy being here.
So I'm going to go take questions from the committee. I see Councillor Crossley with her hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a pleasure to have your presentation back again this year. It's a pleasure to see how well organized you are and how well organized the program is. Despite, you know, persistent comments that from the public about how poor our roads are, I do believe we are making progress and we have decades to catch up on. I have a couple of questions about the sort of state of the budget. Now, first of all, my recollection is that this is the year where a few $1,000,000 worth of ARPA money is being added to the program, and that's what's paying for the roads in the poorest condition, which is allowing the expansion of the program. On the other hand, as you know, we didn't pass our override request. So my question maybe of the department head, Commissioner McGonigal or whomever can answer this question, is how are we piecing together the base budget for this year, the $9.5 million? We've been able to secure that. Do we know that yet?
Thank you, Counselor. Maureen is still working on the budget. We have had discussions internally. Again, as we go through the year, depending on attrition, the snow season, all these other things, this is how we've been adding to the roads budget since we started it in 2017. So hopefully that will continue. And yes, right now we have the $9.8 million worth of work planned. So we're expecting to have additional funding, and we always come to you, well, historically, in the winter, and you'll also be seeing a docket item coming to you in the next couple weeks or so, asking for additional funding from attrition.
Well, I'll be interested to see what the CIP says about this and where you're able to pull the money from this year, because there's an awful lot of competition for even the one-time funds. So there's an early slide that you showed, also about money, but it looked like the amount of the number of miles of roadway we were able to repave for the $9.5 million, except for 1 year, showed a fairly steady decrease. Is that because costs are up? And we have the same amount of money every year, roughly. And I'm guessing, maybe you could just comment on where costs are.
Right. So depending on the treatment, as Conrad spoke to, we want to try to catch the roads and perform maintenance before we have to do complete rehabilitation, because that's much more expensive. So as we do more rehabilitation of the roads, it's less mileage we can do. You know what, we didn't have that slide this year, but in the past we had provided a slide that gives you a square yard cost for each treatment, and we probably should have shown that again. Well, we'll be happy to supply that to you, but that explains a lot of, if we're doing more milling and paving, that really impacts the amount of mileage we can do, as opposed to just like a bonded wearing course, which is a treatment and not full rehabilitation.
So it's more about the nature of the work that you're scheduling and the percent of which kind of work than it is about increased costs of materials?
Well, it's a combination of all of that, Counselor. It's because we, at the beginning of the program too, we were able to tackle a lot of the rehabilitation. The cost of paving has gone way up in the past couple of years compared to what it was at the beginning of the program. But we also need to balance where, as I spoke about the cost benefit value equation that we use, we need to have candidates to be able to do some of that preservation. A lot of and the way that we modeled this entire program was, as we get further and further into the program, we're actually going to be doing more and more preservation, because we want to make sure that the investment that we made at the beginning of the program lasts as long as possible. So we're just on the brink of needing to start doing some more substantial preservation to be able to keep those going forward. But in the past couple of years, we've tried to tackle some of those tougher roadways that are in worse condition. And with that comes all the sidewalk work to go along with it too. So the costs are all incorporated in that as well.
Okay. And then I do have a sidewalk question,
Sure.
which I'm really pleased to see your assessment and your prioritization of sidewalks. Makes a whole lot of sense to do the roads close into the schools first. So I'm sure everybody here has noticed, this might seem like a minor point, but there's a difference in concrete colors on our sidewalks. And I'm not talking about the bituminous, I'm talking about just, concrete with aggregate. And it's sometimes on some streets, it's a patchwork. It goes to from almost white to dark gray, back again, different aggregates and so forth. And I understand that it's possible to control that to a degree if we had a standard for the mix that we were using. And I wonder if you could comment on that, because it looks as much as if you have concrete then bituminous than concrete then bituminous, to have a white patch and a gray patch and a different color gray patch. I wonder if you have an approach to doing that, because it looks like you're going to be doing lots of little pieces of sidewalk.
Yes, thank you, Counselor. We are, and unfortunately, that's really unavoidable. Unless we replace all of the concrete, it does fade. It does fade at different rates if it's in the sun more. We have a strict specification for the concrete that we do use. That's when we bid the concrete, it has to meet that specification. We do test it on occasion also to ensure it meets that spec. But if you're not replacing all the concrete in kind at the same time, you will have that difference in coloration.
Yeah, I don't think it's just from fading, but okay, I'll leave it at that for now. One final question. We go through the city every 2, 3, some number of years to get to reassess and get a new PCI. When are we up for doing that again?
Yep, we just recently did it in October of last year. We did change technologies, as with everything nowadays. It seems that the technology is continuing to evolve. We used a new technology this year, and it actually uses LiDAR and a combination of the photographs that are taken as part of the assessment. So it's completely non-biased in terms of it's all done through artificial intelligence. And what it does is it gives us great photography along the entire road network as well. So as a pavement manager, I personally love to have the photographs to go along with the data that comes out of it as well. Because, they always say a photo says 1,000 words. So for me personally, I love having the photography, and I think it's very, very valuable. And it's great that the city is willing to do that every 2 years, because it really does come in handy when we're selecting roadways and treatments and understanding what is actually going on in the roadway.
All right, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For me.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. Councilor Downs.
Thank you, and forgive me if I missed the answers to some of these questions. My eldest daughter just got a job, so we're taking calls. So in the sidewalk slide, in terms of planning for sidewalks around schools, are you aware that we have a volunteer group here in Newton, the Transportation Advisory Group, that among their projects has been a heat map of desire lines to each school based on roughly where the kids are and where they're zoned to go to school, so that you can, and that has an algorithm that plots the shortest walking distance so that you can prioritize those sidewalks and those crossings that are on the thickest part of the heat map. I'd love to see that overlaid on your map about crossing and sidewalk condition.
Thank you, Council. Yeah, this is all brand new. We were just able to put enough of the data together to give you those 3 examples. So we'll be bringing this to the Complete Streets group, which of course has representatives from Safe Routes to Schools, TAG, planning, to go through once we have good solid data
Okay.
and a plan going forward. This was just a representative, and it actually worked out pretty well because you can see the difference in cost. As Conrad stated, we go from $800,000 to less than $200,000 to just repair and replace all the sidewalk in poor condition, not even addressing the sidewalk that's in fair condition. So
That's excellent.
it will be quite an undertaking, and we'll need all the help we can.
Right, because in doing prioritization, it would certainly make more sense to do those sidewalks that are most necessary and most in highest demand first, rather than those that coming from the dark reaches of Woburn. We walk in the middle of the streets in some areas. We don't need a sidewalk, at least not yet.
Yes.
For some of these areas. Great. The Councilor Crossley mentioned the color of the concrete. I worry more about the spalling. Some of our new sidewalks, in fact, the ones that went in before your time, Commissioner, right after the Ainger School rebuild was started, are in, the surfaces look like the face of Mars. They're in really bad shape. Are we tracking that as well? And do we have a plan to address that?
We do track it. We actually had 2 projects, not in the last couple of years, but a few years back. One was on actually Beacon Street. We had some concrete fail in less than a year, and we did have the contractor come back and replace that at their cost. Again, we do have a specification, but if the concrete's not mixed right at the plant, or sometimes it's conditions installing, if they use too much water to try to cool the concrete when it's hot, because you don't want it to cure too quick or too slowly. So it's that fine line that can affect that also sometimes.
Okay, that's good to hear. I know they were planning to fix ones around Ainger, but and having the contractor back in, but for some reason that one fell through the cracks, so to speak. I would also really appreciate getting that slide you mentioned. It was per square yard, per square meter, per square mile of costs based, depending on which treatment you're getting. It just would be very handy, and it would be good to know what it was last year, just to get a sense of how much the costs have increased. Anyway, Commissioner, I hope your voice starts to sound better than mine soon.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much, Councilor Bowman. Let's see, is Councilor Bowman, are you with us still?
You just call on me.
Yes.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you very much. I had to switch internet for some reason. It was going crazy. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I have many questions, so I'll try to not be too long here. All right. First is, I was surprised only 4% of the ramps were in poor condition. I see, but maybe there's an overlap in my idea of what's in poor condition in those 1,200 potential new ramps. I don't think you didn't show a map of where those new ramps were, did you?
No, but we do have them located all the way through the city.
Excellent. And then the next question I have on that is, did you also note in that whether there were crosswalks painted? And I'm concerned less about the crosswalks that would go, say, along a major road, and more the ones that go across a major road. Like, I know that this is an issue sometimes, that ramps go down and say it's crossing Center Street, and we don't put the ramps down across Center Street to make a crosswalk, but we don't actually paint the crosswalk. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's been really great that both DPW and the Transportation Department have been really efficient in gathering a lot of this data. As you saw, it was Mike Jassett, a city inspector, who conducted the curb ramps and the sidewalk. And I know Jason Sobel and his group actually conducted a striping inventory as well. And we actually helped with QA/QC on the striping inventory. So there is a full striping inventory of where all the crosswalks are.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that. All right. So next up is, I noticed on the paving list, if I understood, when you said the Commonwealth Avenue Service Road, I assume you're talking about the carriage lane. Okay, so this may be a question, maybe more for Jason. So first, I guess, is the question is whether the Beaumont, so would you referenced here to a bonded wearing course, does that mean that you'll be installing curb cuts with that? I don't know who answers that question.
No, Counselor, that's the bonded wearing course is one of the maintenance treatments we talk about. So with those, we won't be doing sidewalk work or anything. That's just to preserve the surface of the road.
Okay, that's the one bad, it's the super bad curb cut off of the, the park area that's between Beaumont and can't think of the name of like Bullows Pond. That, of course, everybody has to, there's no curb cut there off of the thing, so people have to go off. So it would be the one if we could figure out how to put a curb cut there. And I know that money's tight, but that certainly would be a top priority. And so, but obviously you're going to be going over all the newly painted contraflow painting. So I assume that these would go back into place.
Yes, a lot of the painting, I believe, is not even completed. And that's why we held off. We thought we were going to be able to do this process. We want to do it now. If we wait much longer, we won't be able to do that, and it will be major construction.
Yeah. So. And I know that the paint it's not thermoplastic or anything really. It was done. So I just wanted to make sure. So we're not going to be doing, this isn't going to include the reconstruction of Chestnut Street intersection or any other. Okay. And no opportunity to reduce pavement at, say, Prince, or because it's just bonded wearing. Correct. Okay. Shucks. All right.
Prince may be on the list.
So, we'll
that after the fact.
Yeah. Okay. So Wheeler Road is on the list as well for a mill and overlay. So this, I assume that, of course, we had some sort of, we had a grant here. Is it Safe Routes to School or another grant to create some safety improvements here? So is there any chance any of those could be, with the mill and overlay, could be further improved? With, like, I know that we had bump outs at the crosswalks with flex posts that then got taken down in the winter or knocked down. Is there any chance for that to be created as a permanent bump outs at that intersection?
Yeah, and again, I'm sure these are on our list, but these are not lost opportunities, especially the bump outs. We can do those after the fact. Usually they need to be designed, and we're hoping to do that work. This work we need to do this summer while school is out.
Correct.
But again, it's not a lost opportunity at all if we don't get to those bump outs. And I'm not sure, Jason, where those are on our list, if they're on our radar or not.
Good evening, everyone. As Commissioner McGonigal said, usually the bump outs do require additional design to ensure that we're not creating any drainage issues. But I am aware we've been coordinating closely, of course, with our colleagues in the engineering division, and also through the Complete Streets Committee with folks on Safe Routes to School. And I believe we are planning to add a couple of new crosswalks across Wheeler in that area.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. Just not to lose the momentum of the safety improvements we've managed to get done there so far. So I appreciate your attention to that. And I love, this is like my favorite, one of my my favorite meetings of the year is hearing about improvements we're doing to the streets. I'm glad that we're continuing to improve our data and to improve the quality of the roads here. So I appreciate those efforts. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Crossley, I see your hand is up.
Sorry.
Okay. I actually had a couple of questions. One of them was we have 420 miles of sidewalk infrastructure, and you say about 11% of it is in poor condition. And I was wondering about, is that due to tree roots? Is that a major problem? And I asked because I had a constituent reach out to me recently who took a very bad fall on Summer Street in Newton Center and was upset about the tree roots. And I do understand that we try now to plant street trees whose roots are the smaller trees and whose roots are less likely to upend the sidewalk. But is there, I wanted to know if there's a program for us to identify the upended and more dangerous sidewalks so that we know where we are, and do we have a plan specifically for mitigating those trip hazards?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the first step is gathering all of this data. And we will have that. It is noted in the software. And again, as you all know, there are quite a few areas throughout the city where we have tree root issues.
Yes.
And the problem there is to fix that, we have to take the roots out usually. When we can, we ramp over them if it's compliant. Quite often it's not compliant. So we can't really do those repairs without when we tear the roots out, we damage the tree. So it
Right.
really requires a tree removal in a lot of these circumstances, which is the last thing we want to do. But it's the only way to make it compliant. How we have been handling those is ramping them over where we can, and then just dealing with them on a case-by-case basis, being complaint driven. But we do need to come up with a process and a plan for addressing these.
Yeah, I think so, because it would be better if it wasn't just complaint driven, if we could identify some of them ahead of time, because, you know, we do have a lot of seniors living in our city, and we're very vulnerable, and I'm just very aware of that now. And as much as I like the trees and was upset when Adams Street trees were all removed, we did replant them. I ultimately think maybe it was the best decision in that case. And just my other question about, we have 5,200 curb ramps in the city, and 1,200 of them, I think you said, need to be replaced. And I was wondering, are we replacing with different materials? Because I did read something actually in the Globe. I think the city of Boston is using a different material now that's longer lasting. Is that something we're considering?
No, we're still using our same concrete base. They may be talking about the ADA panels.
Yes, maybe that's what I'm talking about too. The ADA panels, yes, at the curb ramps.
Yeah, we've had good luck with the style we've been using.
They're long lasting and durable.
The first generation was not very durable. I think they were like a brick color. But the new ones that we're using now, the yellow, fluorescent yellow, have been holding up very well. Jason, are you aware of anything different being done in Boston or Conrad?
I'm not aware, but happy to look into it to see if there's any other improvements we can make. But
I believe, if you don't mind me adding this, a comment, believe they're metal. They've transferred to a metal, and it's a brown color that they showed in the article, but they're metal versus plastic. So they survive the plowing efforts a little bit better.
Yeah.
They're actually cast iron.
Cast iron, okay. I bet you they're quite a bit more expensive.
And I have seen different parts of the country do use different types of materials, especially when the ADA compliance of curb ramps started to come onto the scene. There were a lot of different products out there, but again, it's more of a cost benefit analysis that needs to be done. And if the city did want to move to something different, there would have to be a whole analysis of what that would cost in the
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Councilor
welcome.
Bowman, I see your hands up again.
So yes, I also wanted to make a point about, of course, I fully support us making our schools more walkable. But I also know that some of our village centers, including Newton Highlands, which we have a project to address, but many of the intersections in Newton Center, I was actually zooming in on your map of Beacon, Langley, and Sumner, that is completely non-accessible. It is a dangerous intersection to cross. So I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we need to address many of our centers as well for accessibility on key points and start to work towards that. We probably need another override for that, but.
Thank you, Council. That area is definitely on our radar.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take one comment or question from a member of the public, Mr. Jesse Corey. Jesse, could you please keep your comment to 3 minutes and please state your address?
Hello, my name is Jesse Corey. I live at 64 Oak Cliff Road. The reason that I'm speaking is because earlier in the season, I had seen on the weekly construction schedule, as well as on another link called the 2023 road paving list, that lists Waltham Street as being planned to be paved this year. But in the past several weeks, Waltham Street has not been on the list on the DPW weekly construction schedule, and it was also removed from the interactive construction map. So I want to ask whether Waltham Street paving has been canceled for this year's season.
Okay, thank you very much. Jason, are you able to answer that question?
No,
Jim? Okay.
You know what, Shauna, what did we remove Waltham? Was there some work being done?
We did remove Waltham from our planned paving for this year. It's been pushed to next year to deal with some work.
Okay.
We have a traffic calming project right there too, at Waltham Fairway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're keeping us on our toes, Jesse. Thank you.
Yeah, not much gets past Jesse, that's for sure. Thank you for your comment and question, Jesse. I'm not seeing any other hands up from any city councilors. So I would like to see if there is a motion to hold this item.
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Kelly has made a motion to hold. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ledger, for your presentation. We appreciate it, and it's very helpful as usual.
Thank you
very much.
Yeah,
it was great seeing you all again, and look forward to continuing the updates.
Thank you. Okay, have a good night. Next item is 12123. It's a approval on roadway infrastructure improvements for Albemarle, the traffic calming project.
Good evening, Councillor.
Good evening, Mr. Ostroff.
Thank you so much. Josh Ostroff, Director of Transportation Planning. I'll be presenting this item along with Jason Sobel, Director of Transportation Operations and Public Works. We were going to be joined by our consulting partner at Neighborways, but she's unfortunately under the weather, so is not able to be with us tonight. I do have a presentation to go through. If I could be granted, do I have privileges to do that?
Certainly. Cassidy, could.
Great. Thank you for that.
Yep, it should be all set.
Excellent. I appreciate it. And thank you for all your help, Cassidy.
No problem.
That's just assuming I can, get my act together with the PowerPoint. So, all right. So again, this is interesting, coming on the heels of the network plan, which is a former elected in the town I live in, I had to restrain myself from asking a lot of questions, but because that stuff's fascinating to me, and I appreciate the committee's engagement. So this is a discussion that's been going on for a couple of years, and but since we haven't been before you for approval since about a year ago, I wanted to just provide some project history. So that's my goal to do that now. I'm glad to take questions anytime. I'll just defer to you. I may not see a hands raised because I'm looking mainly at my screen. So, Madam Chair, I'll just defer to you and just jump in at any point. And then Jason will certainly be chiming in as well. So tonight we'll be talking about an overview of the project, some of the important safety features, reviewing the design, discussing the feedback we received to date, particularly over the past few weeks, and some next steps for this project. This is founded on Newton in Motion, the vision from our transportation plan, which prioritizes safety, smart being using data, accessibility for all, livable to enhance the quality of life in the city, and sustainable, recognizing the importance of transportation to addressing climate change. The city, as was just discussed, embraces complete streets to make sure that they work for all users. Safety is a highest priority, and that's embodied in our aggressive grant programs for safe routes to school. Equity, so that we all have good, safe access to our roadway network. Transportation is the determinant of public health, so that's critical to our how we approach policies, and as well as being consistent with our climate action plan. Central to our view of transportation planning is to moderate speeds on Newton's roads. The faster people drive, the less response time they have, and the less survivable any collision with a pedestrian or bicyclist or people in another vehicle. So we're always looking for ways to get people to drive more safely in our village centers, in our neighborhoods, and on our arterial roads. This project is focused on Albemarle Road and Brookside Ave between Washington Street and the Charles River. It is intended as a short-term pilot. There's no permanent construction planned. We're using rubber and paint and plastic. These are temporary measures consistent with the state grant program through which it is funding. It would be far more costly than the $200,000 that we have received from Mass DOT for this if we were moving curb lines or including signals. But we will be talking about signalization of a problematic intersection, just to inform the committee and the council. So again, consistent with our strategy, we want to increase safety and accessibility, reduce speeds, reduce traffic conflicts, and provide facilities for cyclists and pedestrians, I should add. To review the history of this project, a couple of years ago, we developed conceptual designs. There was a public meeting in March 2022. We had applied for a MassDOT Shared Streets and Spaces grant, which the council accepted last June. We've been undergoing engineering, design, and a public process of the winter and into the spring. And we hope with council's approval to have installation in August of this year. The key safety features are temporary speed cushions, which consistent with the docket item is, technically within your jurisdiction, but we're looking for your blessing for the entirety of this temporary project. Flex posts, head out angle parking, we'll talk more about that. Improvements to sight lines so that motorists have better visibility of other roadway users, and painted and buffered bike lanes. So the use of these temporary rubber speed cushions, they're similar to speed humps designed to 20-mile-an-hour speeds. They allow emergency vehicles to pass right over them. The slots are too wide for most passenger vehicles, and these are intended as a temporary pilot, would be installed about 9 months out of the year, similar to what we've done on Grant Avenue. So they're proposed just for the middle section of this project, northbound and southbound between Watertown and Crafts, every 200 to 500 feet apart, prioritized right before crossings, about 5 or 6 cushions per side. And we would be doing this in consultation with the Newton Fire Department and learning from our recent experience on Grant Avenue. So this is a overhead view of the approximate locations we anticipate these being. We may move some of them. That is, they can make a noise, so we when vehicles go over them. So we may remove the ones that are in front of houses on the bottom right of the screen on the southbound side of Albemarle. But this is just to give you a sense of what we have in mind. And really the goal is when people are traveling on this road, we want them to be going slowly and be more mindful and prepared for particularly kids, but others in the roadway that would be crossing or riding alongside them. Flex posts provide vertical elements that we would be installing at crossings and intersections to separate bicycle lanes and to use at corners to help to reduce the turning radii. And they also allow emergency vehicle access, and those will also be taken up for the winter. And this illustration just gives you a sense of how they're installed, but I'm sure that everyone in the meeting is familiar with these elements that have been sprouting all over the region in the past few years. The next element is head out angle parking, which is angle parking similar to head in, but you would back up when you're entering versus exiting. And it's the first maneuver that we all make when we are doing parallel parking. AAA recommends that drivers reverse into parking spaces whenever possible. They also recommend head out angle parking. The benefits of this are primarily greater visibility. You're backing up into a space versus into moving traffic. The doors shield vehicles from traffic, and you can trunk load onto the sidewalk versus into a travel lane. It maintains the space efficiency of head-in angle parking, but providing important safety benefits. Not to say the Newton is the same as Tucson, Arizona, but they used to have one car and bike crash per week, and after they changed to head-out parking, they had no crashes in 4 years. The next element is to improve sightlines. Right now, we have parking, notwithstanding the ordinance that prohibits parking within 20 feet of an intersection. We have parking right up against crosswalks and closer to intersections. So we want to remove that to provide greater visibility. Lastly, buffered bike lanes. There's sometimes some questions about terminology, but a buffered bike lane or separated bike lane means that you have just some pavement, usually demarcated with paint or thermoplastic, to separate the motor vehicle lane from the bicycle lane. And that's what we're proposing for most of this project on Albemarle. It's a visual and a painted buffer and gives more clarity for the safest place to ride. In a perfect world with more dimensions, we'd be looking at protected bike lanes, but there's not currently width enough to do that on Albemarle. Slightly different approach is proposed on Brookside Avenue. We're thinking of this as a neighborhood greenway. It has relatively low traffic volumes. So we would have improvements at Washington Street that I'll show, that you can see on this slide. We'd slow turns with flex posts and paint at Albemarle, which is, if you're familiar, Albemarle kind of comes in from the side and then it stops on the northbound side in terms of its name, and then it resumes again as you're heading north onto past Watertown Street. But there would also be a contraflow bike lane. So for that short section of a few hundred feet on Brookside, it would be one way for drivers and two way for cyclists. And this is just an illustration of the intersection of Watertown and Albemarle. So, well, Brookside is the bottom right, just the way streets were named, which street was built first. So there would be something called a bike box that is that green horizontal section at the intersection where cyclists can safely wait for the light to change or for, to have the right of way. Something called a cross bike, which is like a crosswalk where cyclists are encouraged to ride to lead them into the buffered bike lane. And you can see the contraflow bike lane heading southbound on Brookside. So as we get into Albemarle heading north, so what's interesting about this, and we'll talk a little bit about everything that happens on Albemarle, but during school pickup times, when day gets out, you've got double-barreled school buses blocking traffic. So traffic comes to a standstill for a few minutes in the afternoon where there's no passing. But we would provide cyclists with their lane on the Brook side, towards the left, separated at strategic locations where there's crosswalks with speed cushions, with flex posts, and you can see the speed cushions approaching the crosswalks. We also don't currently have sidewalks for most of Albemarle on the southbound. So where there is a walking path across the pedestrian bridge, a few feet up the southbound side of Albemarle, and then onto Wildwood Trail that heads to the west, there would be a painted pedestrian path. Again, think of these as short-term improvements. So this is what we're proposing to be in place for a few years. Software called AutoTurn does a parking analysis. So getting back to the back-end parking, it shows that for most vehicles, there would not be any incursion into the protected bike lane. This is a large truck and a Ford F-150. So it's showing that there's no interception into the bike lane, just into the buffer space in between. So coming on the heels of the roadway improvement plan, we can see that this is a roadway that is ripe for resurfacing, as some are in Newton. This is the southbound section of Albemarle. I wouldn't personally recommend just paving it regarding its condition, but really looking at a redesign to provide sidewalks. So there's more that can be done here, but we would definitely only be doing temporary measures on this roadway. So that's why paint would be more cost effective than thermoplastic, and we'd be looking at longer term improvements in the years to come. So why don't I just pause for a second and talk about something that I'm sure you're aware of, which is the concern of many families and residents getting across the Albemarle and Crafts intersection. This is a high hazard area, and we were successful in securing a state grant, the Safe Routes to School grant, for signalization that's currently targeted for federal fiscal year 2025. And we're seeking to try to advance that. I'm sure the members of the committee and public have seen the letter from the Friends of Albemarle urging improvements. So we have worked with our partners in engineering to look at some short-term safety improvements happening this spring. And I wonder if I could just ask Jason to talk for a few minutes about what's proposed here.
Sure. Thanks, Josh, and good evening, everyone. Given the focus and some of the recent crash history here at the Albemarle Crafts intersection, certainly implementing this entire plan is more than DPW Transportation Division has capacity to install in-house, and we're fortunate to have received the grant from MassDOT for the entire corridor. But that said, we did want to move ahead and install some of these safety improvements at the intersection in the near term. So, certainly we've been working closely with Josh and folks in planning, as well as the consultant Neighborways. So the plan here is to move ahead with in-house staff to implement this portion of the plan in the near future before the rest of the plans are finalized and we have to bid it out and have the contractor install it. So these intersection improvements and pavement markings and flex posts in the vicinity of the intersection, we are planning to implement in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much, Jason. So this is just giving a little bit more detail of some of the measures that we would be taking as part of this project, which is to remove a northbound lane on Albemarle as you approach Crafts, because we found that having multiple lanes is a challenge at an unsignalized intersection. A car may be on the left and someone else will come up on the right. and not see that there's a pedestrian in front of the car on the left, for example. So that's the kind of behavior that happens when you've got multiple lanes of traffic. We recognize that there are some consequences to this in terms of the queuing of cars going, heading north. Over the left, we show it's in a greenish blue color. There's been discussion of potential parking on near Fessenden. That is just shown because it's been discussed, but that has not been approved, and there's more work to do to move that forward. By the way, we just have something like a slip lane. It's just enough for 3 or 4 cars currently on the right lane of Albemarle northbound. So it's only really functions as a turning lane. North of North Street, we don't have a lot of improvements, just some painted bump outs to help slow turns with flex posts and paint, the intersection of Brookdale and Joseph Road and Nevada Street. And then you get up to the Charles River Greenway. But this is just about the lowest volume section of Albemarle. So just wanted to take a moment and talk about the parking layout, what we would have here. So at the corner of, if we're going from right to left, which is to say south to north, and focusing on the northbound side, there would be a section of parallel parking that's shaded in blue, then 45-degree head-out angle parking, then a section by Gath Pool of 60-degree head-out, and then back to 45-degree head-out. And what we're doing here with the different angles is we're trying to preserve as much room as possible in the travel lanes. Where we formerly had 90-degree head-out parking, or head-in, I should say, because of the length of cars, that doesn't leave any room for the bike lane that we want to preserve for the length of the corridor. So that's why that's changing. We showed the existing pedestrian bridge, but as members may know, there's discussion of a new bridge, as well as many field improvements that are planned in this area, led by the team at PRC. And I also note the further study proposed for the concept of a permeable parking area. So continuing with the parking discussion, what we have today is the 60-degree head-in parking or 90-degree head-in parking. That's on the left. In the middle, we show our draft design for a combination of 45 and 60-degree head-out parking, and then just an illustration of what has been discussed but not proposed and not part of this project for angle parking on the southbound side closer to Fessenden. So there's been a lot of engagement. I've only been able to been on the team here since the beginning of January, but over the past year plus, the team has met with, of course, many of you counselors, and we thank you for your time. Folks in various city departments, the public schools, NECP, Complete Streets Working Group, Friends of Albemarle, and many of the other stakeholders involved with this project, whether in the neighborhood or citywide. We've had the opportunity to present, have listening sessions, present at various meetings, and have site visits, and gotten a lot of input. So just to talk about some of the, we probably received 75 or so comments in the past few weeks. People are concerned about all the high volumes of vulnerable users and all the kids. As you can see, if you were there when school lets in or out, or on a busy day when people are using the fields and the pool. Speeds, accessibility, safety of pedestrians and bicyclists, the nature of bus operations, intersection safety is a big concern. People are concerned about parking. And we've also gotten input about environmental preservation. Cheesecake Brook is not much of a brook now. It's channelized, it serves as drainage, but it's not, it doesn't function the way a waterway should. And people are interested in placemaking and art, which is beyond the scope of this particular grant. Albemarle is used year-round, day and night, all times of the day. Lots of kids, very, very popular for walking and biking. And it's really at the heart of the city's athletic complex. So it's much more than a park. It's been closed in the past on the 4th of July, as I'm sure you all know. So our approach to speeding is welcome. People talk about their support for traffic calming. They like the idea of speed cushions. There's concern about speeding on side streets and cut through the neighborhood. And people are looking for more enforcement about speeding and weight limits. Pedestrian safety is an issue. I mentioned the lack of a southbound crosswalk. So it's not uncommon for folks to be walking in the road. We do need sidewalks there. Well, I've spoken directly to parents who would ordinarily have their kids be walking or biking, but have to drive them because they're concerns about safety. A lot of those are focused on the Albemarle and Crafts intersection, but they're concerned about Albemarle as well. Because there's no assigned place for people to bike, they will tend to do so on sidewalks. People are appreciative of the idea of flex posts, greater sight lines, removing the ability for people to park in crosswalks, maybe install a rapid flash beacon at Gath Pool crosswalk, which would not be that could complement what we're proposing here, and the need for signal and crosswalk improvements at the intersections, and also a desire for wayfinding signs. The bridges are generally not accessible, especially the one that washed away, but so people are looking for more ways to cross Albemarle, to maintain or increase the accessible parking that's there, and maybe look at relocating the accessible crossing and the bridge closer to the pool entrance. We've heard a lot from cyclists who just want safety and accessibility citywide, but certainly here. People appreciate the opportunity for a protected bike lane, although it would not technically be protected, just buffered. And just concerns about the conflicts, whether it's because of people backing out of the head-in parking spaces or lack of defined space on the roadway. Looking for more bike parking and, again, wayfinding signs. Bus operations aren't something that we're really specifically able to address within this grant, but the behavior of kids and drivers around buses is important. Having better sight lines at crosswalks will be helpful. Formalizing the bus pickup and drop off is outside the scope of this project. So there's a lot of conflicts, a lot of turnover with parking, particularly when people are picking up, dropping off their kids for athletic events. There's a lack of parking. We'll talk about some solutions for that in a minute. Because the brook side of the road, both northbound and southbound, has so-called country drainage. There's no curb. There's a lot of erosion of the shoulder when people park there, particularly on the southbound side. So having designated areas for pickup and drop off would be helpful. A parking map and wayfinding is important, and folks have asked for education and practice for head out angle parking. We'll talk about that as well. So the intersection safety is outside some of the scope of this, although we are looking for better paint improvements and flex posts in order to reduce the turns so that people aren't right up against the sidewalk. The northbound traffic forming multiple lanes at peak hours creates conflict points. So that's the reason to reduce Albemarle to one lane, eliminate the turning lane. But we've heard concerns about that as well. People are concerned about what that might mean for traffic volumes. And then at various sections of the roadway, it's closed, heading northbound. So people are generally appreciate that. That has not been subject of a lot of conflict. We are looking for, we've gotten input where people are looking for, better indication of where their signs are for two-way traffic. As you know, in the northern sections, there are two-way streets on both sides of Albemarle. Having double yellow center lines would be beneficial in these areas, and shared lane markings where it's shared with bikes and cars. We've heard from folks who have actually witnessed crashes with turning vehicles from Albemarle to north. So also not within our scope, but there is concern about about erosion of the banks from parking on the shoulders. Maybe there's an opportunity to reform this and turn it from a ditch to a waterway that people can truly celebrate and enjoy. There are concerns about flooding and runoff. Of course, the bridge that was destroyed by a storm some time ago was indicative of that. We don't have ways to recharge the aquifer. We're just taking stormwater right from the road and dumping it into the Charles with minimal, if any, filtration. So again, well beyond the scope, but helpful for us to be thinking about is what people want to make this a better sense of place, whether it's water garden, rain gardens, water fountains, I should say, murals, educational kiosks and signs. Just sharing this to know that when you ask people what they want, you get a lot of feedback. So I'm really excited about this aspect of it because we're asking people to do some things that they aren't normally accustomed to doing, whether it's sharing a road with a new bike lane or speed humps, or perhaps most significantly from the feedback we've gotten so far, the idea of head out parking. So we're planning events this summer to promote and practice it. We want to make this something that people gain confidence in so that they can do it comfortably when they're in a hurry, with a series of videos, sharing all the options for where people can park legally on public streets nearby. There's hundreds of spaces nearby. Within a 5-minute walk, there's over 1,500 spaces. So if people want to be able to go to an event, but they don't want to do head out parking, they'll have many options to do that. And we will include that in our communications effort. And working with schools, athletics, and the neighbors to notify people about the changes and the installation schedule, which we anticipate in August. Just today, actually, I had an email exchange with a colleague who's VP for Public Affairs with AAA Southern New England, and this is back in head out angle parking is something that they support, and she'd be very interested in participating in an event with us to help familiarize people with this idea and communicate with their members. So I hope to continue conversations with that. So as I mentioned before, Albemarle has a lot of activity and much more to come in addition to the pool reconstruction and bridge replacement and accessibility improvements, upgrades to a lot of fields, and the signalization of intersections that we talked about earlier. And then we're working on plans to improve safety and accessibility on Washington Street. So this is really looked at as, while this is a short-term project, it implicates many long-term initiatives of the city. So the next steps are to finalize design based on all the feedback we've received. We'll be going before the Traffic Council for approvals for some project elements next month. We hope to go out to bid in June, continue our education and engagement up to and after installation, which we hope to have in August of this year. So we are asking approval of the plan as it is, including speed cushions in accordance with the city ordinance 26-51B. I'll stop sharing for the moment, but we'll be glad to go show you any slides that people may have questions about. I know I went on for a long time. Sorry about that, but really appreciate your attention and hope to earn your support. And Councilor, happy to you direct
Yes.
questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ostroff, for your presentation. I see we have a bunch of hands up, so let me go directly to the council. Councilor Kalis, followed by Councilor Laredo.
Thank you, Chair Leary. I have a few questions, and thank you, Mr. Ostroff. That was quite a presentation. I really did enjoy it, though. Couple of questions I have. So one is, will there be signage indicating head out parking?
Yes, I'm not sure if that's funded within the budget or if we need to work with Public Works separately for that. So, but yes, that's integral to it.
Yeah, I think it's key. I also think, as you were talking, it's really a big commitment to this head out parking. Has it been done anywhere in Newton or around us, and has it been done successfully? And then you talked about trainings, and I think that's great for people that are going there in the next 5 years. But then after that, how do we make sure that people understand this is head out and that they're comfortable with it? Because I'm part of this is I'm wondering, what else did you look at And did we lose spots? How many? How did you land on this head out? I think it maximized your spots that we have, but I'm a little concerned about this because I haven't seen this. I mean, I love it, but I'm just not sure.
Sure. So thank you for those questions. It was done on Homer Street when the library lot was under reconstruction for solar arrays. And as you probably know, in the public realm, we hear from people who are not happy more than people who are happy. So there was some negative feedback, and people didn't feel like they had good experience with it. I can't speak to that experience. But I totally credit when people say they didn't like it, they didn't get used to it, they weren't confident. I fully appreciate that. And
Actually, I can give you some direct feedback because I didn't realize that was head out. I took a wide turn and went head in.
Well, I'm sure glad this meeting is not being recorded or live streamed. But Counselor, I want to say that I'm very committed to making this work, and it is really done to help us share a very congested roadway with a lot of vulnerable users to provide the best ingredient to roadway safety, which is visibility. When you're merging into traffic, you have an idea of what's in front of you and what's to the side. When you're backing up, you don't. And even with the backup camera, which will help benefit you getting in, that doesn't always tell you who's approaching at speed around.
No, you've got me on the safety. I think that's totally there. It's about the education that I'm worried.
Yeah. Well, me too. I'll be candid with you. I look at this as a big job. You know, when you're changing behavior or asking people to change behavior, you're asking a lot of them. So this is something that I'll be working with. A new colleague, Olivia James, joined our department recently in community engagement. She and I are partnering with this. We want to engage, take AAA up on the opportunity to work together. It's going to require more than just the mayor's newsletter. I foresee videos. I mean, I don't want to make light of this because it is very serious. It's a serious problem we're trying to solve. But I also feel that you get people's attention by making something interesting and fun and catchy. And so whether it's a question of videos or social media or, contest to see who can get it right, I want to bring a taco truck in and have them back in. And so we want to do things that are memorable, that help people associate this challenging thing with giving them better confidence and a sense that they are contributing to something that's beneficial. But there are trade-offs. In fact, I want to just flag one thing, and then I want to answer your other questions. We heard, and some may say here, that a benefit of the head-in parking is that they can stay in their car and be dry and warm watching their kids or friends play sports. I get that. We are asking people to make a change, but every meeting you have to vote on something that amounts to a trade-off. So I am going to be earnestly looking for feedback and ideas on how we can make this a success, because I want to prove that Newton can do this, because we have limited space. But we are not venturing a lot. We're using state funding to do something that with paint, not thermoplast, that we're able to do something that these are temporary measures. So if I'm wrong and it doesn't work, then we'll have to revert to a different plan. But it will not, it will come with experience, or maybe we'll find that it works great in some locations and not others. But so the ingredients are demonstrations, incentives, good information, and repeating all those things so that people are getting the the positive reinforcement that they need to do.
I just have I think that last point you made is really well taken, that it's just paint. Two other very quick questions. The slip lane near Craft Street, how do people know that that's a turning lane? Is that supposed to be a turning lane or not? And then is there enough the parking seems to go all the way or just about up to that slip area. And will the queue of cars that going onto Crafts block the cars that are parked?
Probably. So Jason and I would need to talk more about the signage there, because, you know, there is that slip lane, and we would be removing that, but not adding parking there. So it would just be the cross hatching. We are in Massachusetts, so I'm sure that there will be some reckless drivers who use that to, you know, shave a few seconds. That is, you know, that is an issue.
Oh, but it's not meant for right turning.
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. So one other thing is that I look at this as a temporary inconvenience until there's a signal. When that intersection is signalized, you know, then you have, whether it's loop detectors or video or other means, so that you are able to address the queuing. I mean, there'll always be more cars on the road than we want, you know, and there will inevitably be delays. But you do raise a good point, and we will have to observe this to see if people, you know, backing into a space get jammed up with others at the intersection. I don't worry so much about them leaving, because that merge movement, you know, except when you get like people who have too much, you know, macho in them, you know, just don't make eye contact. But I don't want to say that, because I've just talked to you about visibility. The psychology of driving in Massachusetts, as we know, is complex.
Thank you very much.
Great questions. Thank you so much, Councilor.
On that point, Mr. Ostroff, regarding the hatching, why wouldn't you put a flex posts there to prevent people from taking that right turn?
So I want to just take a quick, if you'll just indulge me, rather than share the screen again, let me just find that slide.
Josh, I can jump in.
Oh, thank you, Jason.
For that northbound right area at the northbound approach to Craft Street, there are a few flex posts proposed, and that's something that we are planning to do in the short term as part of the Crafts Albemarle intersection work.
Oh, okay, so there will be flex posts there.
Yeah, so sorry. So
Okay.
so right in here, you can't really see them. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I couldn't see them. Thank you very much.
Yeah, not the first time, Jason Sobel has saved me.
Okay, so I have Councilor Kelly next, followed by, oh, Councilor Laredo, you dropped down. Sorry, you were ahead, right?
He was before me.
Thank you. I apologize, colleagues. This is the second time my internet's gone down tonight, so you'll have to excuse me for being on the phone. So thank you, first of all, Mr. Ostroff, for a really good presentation. Very supportive of trying experimental things here. Two comments. One, I have to say I'm less enthused about the speed. I'm not going to call them bumps, but speed barriers. As someone who drives Grant Street on a regular basis, I have not found them to be especially effective. Rather than people speed up, slow down, and speed up again. With that said, I think Albemarle Road is a different type of road where generally traffic should be much slower. And so I'm fine with trying it out there. I do have some concerns, though, about the angle parking. And I'm not, I agree it's better to do angular than 90 degrees. That makes good sense to me. But if you're doing angular with face in or face out, it seems to me you get the same number of spaces either way.
Right.
And so I don't think you're getting more spaces that way. My concern is that I took a quick look at some of the studies out there that argue that backing in is safer. And I'm sure if you're a police officer or a regular driver, someone who drives on a regular basis, I think they have the skill set to do this. But we have a lot of people going to Albemarle who are 17-year-old new drivers. And there is no way, having had 3 kids learn to drive, that they know how to back up properly between 2 parked cars safely and get in. And I see that actually being far more dangerous for them, far more likely to cause accidents, no matter what kind of education program you do. So I have some serious concerns about this. And, I'm also concerned, frankly, that there was a negative experience on Homer Street, a lot of people unhappy about it. And yet again, we're trying to do it again. The idea of Homer Street was it was supposed to be a trial and it didn't work so well. So that's the one piece of this I have some very serious reservations about. Otherwise, I think it's great.
Thank you so much for those comments.
Josh, can I respond to that?
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Councilor Laredo, for sharing your concerns. Well, Josh is correct that we did receive some negative feedback on Homer Street. As Josh also stated, as I'm sure you know, we're far more likely to hear from folks who have complaints. That was a temporary trial on Homer Street to increase the number of parking spaces during the library lot construction. And, you know, it was right by City Hall. All the city staff, we saw it every day continuously. The back and angle parking was very well utilized. And there were many, many people who used that, who did not complain at all about it. And from that perspective, I think it was fairly successful. I would also add that the back and angle parking, you know, is appropriate on some roads and not on others. And the types of roads that it's most appropriate on are one-way roads. Because the last thing we would want is to have, if we installed back and angle parking on a two-way road, we don't want folks turning left, crossing a double yellow, and now backing up and facing the wrong direction as they exit. So Homer Street during the trial was a one-way road, and similarly Albemarle is a one-way road where we're proposing it now.
So, Mr. Sobel, let me just interject here.
Sure.
I understand the difference between one-way and two-way. I don't think you ought to take results that you heard from a bunch of people who are unhappy, but the rest of them didn't call you to conclude that people were happy with something. Yes, it's true. Generally, people will complain, but there's lots of folks who will find that irritating or annoying who will not necessarily call you, the mayor, or us. So unless you did some kind of scientific survey to determine satisfaction with that, I don't think you should draw that conclusion. And I mean, I appreciate that it's safer, that it's not a good use on a two-way road, but with Homer Street, you didn't have any parking and you added to parking and people had no other choice but to park there. Here, as I understand it, with angle parking, either way, you're getting the exact same number of spaces. The only question is whether people pull in or back in. That's it.
So you're absolutely correct, Councilor Laredo, about the number of spaces. This is entirely driven by safety. And I don't have a scientific survey about whether or not people were satisfied. But when I said that I view Homer Street trial as a success, it was based on observations that those parking spaces were very well utilized.
I think they have to be well utilized, Mr. Sobel. I mean, there were no other place to park. So people will find a way to park. The question for us, I think, is it optimal or not? That's all. And you get differences of opinion on that.
The last point I'll make on this is in regards to safety. With any angled parking, whether head in or back in, it always requires backing up. So the question is with head in angle parking, you pull in forward into the parking spot and then have to back into a moving travel lane with poor visibility. With back and angle parking, you pull past the spot. It's very similar to parallel parking, and frankly, it's a simpler maneuver, less complicated than parallel parking, which we have all over the city. And certainly, when you stop to back up into a parking spot, all the other vehicles on the road are stopped and letting you do that maneuver. So in that regard, I would say that it is significantly safer.
Mr. Sobel, I guess I'll just differ a little bit. When I park my car in an angle parking and I'm driving indirectly, I can see in front of me two cars side by side and I can figure out the exact proportions of where I'm supposed to be. When it's time to back out, I can do the same thing. If you're backing into a parking space respectfully, I think that's a harder maneuver, particularly not for an experienced driver. I think, a professional driver, truck driver, a taxi driver, even someone who might drive Uber or Lyft regularly, I think they may find it easier. But I'm very concerned about the high school kid, and that's who's going to be using these fields, is high school kids backing in safely from a street. I think that's a hard maneuver for them. And I would suggest maybe we talk to some of the folks in the driving schools and get their sense of how difficult it is for their kids to do those kinds of maneuvers. So look, I'll leave it at that. It's a judgment call on everyone's part. I just profess to have concerns about it. And if we're going to do this as a trial, I would like to know how we're going to measure success. And it can't just be, we saw the spaces filled or we didn't get too many complaints. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Ritter. Your point's well taken. I think whenever you ask people to do a new skill or do something differently, it can be difficult. Right now, people can't even stay on the road. They have to hit the telephone poles that prevent them from going into the brook. So I'm glad we're doing some traffic calming here. I'm going to go to Councilor Kelly, followed by Councilor Downs.
Thank you. And sometimes they still do go into the brook anyway. We've had several cars do that just this year over on Albemarle. I have to be pulled out by a tow truck. I guess first of all, I'll say I very much appreciate and agree that safety is the main driving goal and concern for this project. However, I too, like Councilors Kalis and Laredo, have, and Josh knows this because I've been following this the whole time he's been here for probably a year before he got here when it was originally Nicole Friedman's project. I have concerns about this back in parking. I've been meeting with Josh and his group and the group before that for about a year now. All of us Ward 3 councilors, Pam and Julia and I, and the Ward 2 councilors, Emily and Susan and Tariq, have all met with them. I'm the only one of that group here tonight, so I should only speak for myself, but I will say all of us have been very concerned about many aspects of this project. And part of that is what we hear from the neighbors and the residents. I think that if the library parking was a trial, if it had been successful, I would guess, Jason, that it would have continued afterwards. I don't know about you. You say only a few, or some people complained. I only heard complaints about it. I heard, and I don't know if there's data for this, that, attendance at the library was less, and that could have just been because of the construction. It could also be because maybe there's an older population that didn't want to have to back in. As Councilor Laredo pointed out, over here on Albemarle, which is very busy, particularly during the spring, summer, and early fall months, and it will be even busier with now the Newton Early Childhood Program there, and when the Gaff pool is under construction and built, and when all the fields are relocated, it will be a very, very busy area that will need more parking and a safer passage than it has. The point that Councilor Laredo made about that you have the even number of parking spaces, though, is not true here. We are losing 23 parking spaces here over what we have now. And it's already not enough. As was pointed out, people are parking on the shoulders. There's no sidewalk on the south side. And that's because people also park there. If there was a sidewalk there, then I don't even think people could park there. It's true that there are a lot of side streets that people could park on. Josh put that map up of where you could park, and then you can talk to all the neighbors who don't want people parking on their side streets. And I did point out to you, but you didn't change it. The parking lots you showed in pink are all private parking lots. So those are not areas that people can park in publicly when they come over to this area. That was like the Boys and Girls Club and Fessenden, etc. When there are swim meets, championship meets, or soccer tournaments, it is just packed over there. Another concern we had, again, I say we as wards 2 and 3, but I'll just speak for myself, is it's a narrow 11-foot wide passage lane. And in one of the drawings you showed, It was the one that showed the backup turning where the car might swing into the buffer lane of the bike lane. That is a little problematic for some of us. It is already, I believe, and Alicia can probably speak to this, as can Jason and Josh, a 4-foot wide bike lane where 5 would have been ideal. So it's a little bit narrower than we'd want, and then a 2-foot buffer. So if you have cars swinging into that, I do think it's problematic, especially as was shown in that diagram. Those are substandard size parking spaces of 18 feet by 8 foot wide. And again, not only do we have teenagers driving here, but over in this area particularly, we have a lot of big vehicles like Suburbans and pickup trucks. We have people coming with bags of soccer balls and softball and baseball equipment and dropping their kids off for swimming. I think that expecting people in oversized vehicles to learn this new back-end thing is going to be an interesting challenge, as you put it, for the summer. Another thing, I guess just as a site planner, and I have unfortunately laid out a lot of roadways and parking lots in my time professionally, is I'm not sure how having some of those spaces be at 60 degrees and some at 45 makes sense for how people anticipate how they're backing into them. Like, you'd think that you would want to just get used to one angle rather than have those at 45 in front of Gath Pool. And I think you tried to explain why that was, about getting more width of roadway, but I didn't quite understand that myself. You have 60 degrees up at the Crafts end, and then 45 in front of Gath, and then 60 again down further, and then parallel by NECP. So you've just got a couple of different layouts that I think make it confusing for drivers. Another question I have is around the timing of the construction. I appreciate that you're going to try and put this out to bid in June and build it in August. I think that's going to be pretty hard when you've still got the fields in full use, you've got the pool in full use. I think there's probably going to be maybe a week of summer vacation for NECP, just the timing of how you do that, because you're going to have to close off that road and get it all done, hopefully before day starts again. I mean, that's just going to be a construction scheduling issue for you guys. So the size of some of those parking lots, the angles, the variety of the angles, the difficulty of the head out, the location of some alternative parking areas that you're looking for are some of the issues that I know you're familiar with, Josh, because you've met with us and you've heard it all before. Yep. And none of it changed as a result of any of our input. So I did want to just share it with public facilities, because no one on this meeting has been going through months of hearing these conversations before. And I do see one of our neighbors nodding her head here too. So those are just some of the concerns I have. However, I will say I really appreciate the Safe Routes to School people's objective here. And I really appreciate, if safety first, Jason, you talked about that intersection of Albemarle and Crafts, and I'm so glad you're going to be doing something there soon, because that is truly a horrendous, dangerous intersection. And I'm really glad to hear that that's going to be happening, starting soon. And I hope you can move that schedule up from fiscal year 25 to do greater improvements there. But I applaud the safety first motive. And I think that the idea about retraining all the people, it's not just Newton people who use these fields either, about a whole new parking way. I'm impressed that AAA thinks that this is the way to go. And maybe you can just train us all. And maybe all the complaints I'm hearing every week from people who have not dared speak up at some of the meetings, but who call us counselors to say this is horrible. I'm speaking on their behalf tonight. Okay, thanks.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Yo.
Thank you very much. One thing on the quantity of parking, we have strongly been looking at the possibility of, because we know with the new Gath and the new athletic fields that the CPC is now approved and are coming your way, that if you build it, they will come. We are strongly looking at the installation of a second bridge over the brook and a improved parking on the other side.
Yes.
Because for a variety of reasons regarding the new facilities and creating safer passage as Josh has presented, having some parking, especially for bigger events on the other side of the brook, so you don't have to walk all the way around to Craft Street.
Right.
And also for the fireworks, the night of the fireworks, there's a number of reasons why having a second bridge fully accessible might make sense. So we're looking strongly at that. We've talked to Fessenden School as well. So there may be some more on that front in the future. Thanks.
Yeah, great idea. Thanks,
Thank you,
Jonathan.
Ms. Leah. And Councillor Kelly, thank you so much for your diligence on this. I did go to one meeting. Hopefully with it being safer to cross and bike, more people will do so, and maybe that will encourage a little more non-vehicular use.
No, I didn't mean to dismiss, like, we have had Allison at least once and Maria once and John Oliver once. So the councilors from Ward 1 have been involved in following this also, but we in 2 and 3 have been pretty much on top of it too. Thank you.
Yes, you have. I'm going to go. Ross, did you want to make a point?
I just wanted to thank Councillor Kelly for her time a couple weeks ago and for her comments tonight. And I just wanted to respond to a couple of quick things if I could. That we kept the map as it was that shows those parking spaces, but any outreach we do to the public to advise them would only be the spaces that are to the public. It was really more just for your information of, like, we've done this inventory, and if we do have permission to use other spaces, then we certainly would do so. The standard, all of these would be 9 feet wide. I think there was some input that you provided, and I failed to mention that earlier. I apologize for that. The standard parking stall is 9 by 18, so this would be, consistent with that.
I'll just change your graphics then to reflect that, so other people don't get confused when they look at it, as I did.
Good point well taken. Thank you so much for that. We are trying to maximize parking. The reason. So that's partly why we are, using a combination of 60 and 45 to address the road width, but also to just maximize the number of cars we can pack into north side of Albemarle, northbound side. But, we do recognize that we are losing spaces, but we're losing them for, I think, good reasons.
Right.
So it is a challenge. We always, you every day hear questions that we do, where are people going to park and how easily will they park? So I do not underestimate the challenge of getting this done. And I can see why it's easier to the status quo, but the status quo is just not working. And we are really concerned about the safety, but we'll never quarrel about there are trade-offs. So no disagreement there. But I appreciate your good, your comments.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Downs, followed by Councillor Crossley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really excited about this, and I think it's a really important project. The so-called slip lane on Craft at Albemarle, northbound, is not a legal slip lane now. I believe it's supposed to be parking. And when people park there, then we don't have the turn onto Crafts from Albemarle. It's quite dangerous. That's where we're seeing a lot of the crashes. And fortunately, we have some early actions coming from DPW and the Transportation Division to address particularly that intersection, which is quite unsafe. This is a pilot. I think we can be open-minded about it. Back in angled parking is the recommended treatment for park areas, particularly where the vehicles, when leaving the parking spot, are going to be heading toward a bike lane. And the whole idea here is to make it as safe as possible for the hundreds of kids who are using the pool and the fields and going to school here. So I'm open to seeing how this works. We can always, it's paint, we can always go back and fix it if it doesn't work out, but let's try to keep the kids safe. Would be my plea to my colleagues. Thank you, that's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. Councillor Crossley, followed by Councillor Bowman.
Well, Thank you. You'd think at this point there wouldn't be anything left to say, but just so you can hear a little bit from everybody, I'm trying to remember where it was in the country that I first experienced this head out angle parking. I'm pretty sure it was Colorado. I thought it was Boulder, but I'm looking for images right now and I can't find them. And it surprised me, but it didn't make me sort of angry or upset. And I just, you kind of figure out how to do it. I think if we all were taught how to do this in driving school, driver's ed school, it wouldn't be an issue. And it particularly wouldn't be an issue for, young people any more than any other driving skill is an issue for young people who tend to drive too fast and think they are, invincible and, can't possibly hurt themselves no matter what they do. I guess just a lot of people are like that too. I appreciated Councilor Leary's comments about drivers, and we just have a lot of impetuous drivers in our place. So I think it is going to be challenging as people are not used to it. But I, as getting to be an old dog, wouldn't be happy to learn a new trick. And I really appreciate the work that's gone into this. I'm one of the counselors who hasn't been to a meeting yet on it. But really appreciate the attention to safety. I'm sold on the description of why the head out angle parking would be safer if people would learn to do it in this particular case, especially when you have a lot of oversized vehicles, as Councilor Kelly said, and I really appreciated your very comprehensive assessment of everything. But you got a lot of parents with lots of kids, and as I think somebody said, bringing a huge amount of equipment and bringing it out the back of the vehicle. And so then heading out when you have you're sharing the roadway with, walkers and bikers and one-way traffic, heading out and being able to see where you're going as you're heading out it just does seem safer. So I'll leave it at that. I think, we should try it.
Thank you, Councilor Crossley. So Councilor Bowman, followed by Councilor Kalis.
Thank you very much. So I've been obviously following along and participating in many meetings where this was presented to Safe Routes to School and to the neighborhood and other organizations. And, I guess we could talk about the loss of those spaces, although I know that the loss of the spaces have improved safety for, better setback from the crosswalk, which is a huge issue. If you haven't seen the video of kids trying to cross the street with cars and buses and all of that, visibility was a huge issue. I am a person who frequently backs into parking spaces. I do it every day at the Y, especially if I have to park along the this part of the lot that backs up to the Pike, mostly because it's so much easier to see pulling out. And I see this project, this back and angle parking here, very different than the trial that was done on Homer Street. So first of all, Homer Street is a connector street, maybe more so than we want it to be. People coming through who aren't going to the library, who are just trying to get to the next light. I think different than Albemarle, where most people who are on Albemarle are there to go to someplace on Albemarle, and if they're not, then they should just be okay waiting. So I think that's a problem that a lot of people had, is they stopped and went to turn in, and people had bunched up on them, not expecting that to happen. So I think it is a little bit different. I think that it's no doubt that it is far safer, and I believe it's Boulder, Councilor Crossley, that you probably, it was Colorado. They have the biggest implementation of this, Boulder, Colorado. But it's, I see it as something for us to do, and I think that teenagers can learn. They can learn how to parallel park in Newton Center, and I see them do it. Then they can learn how to back and angle park here at Albemarle if they are true, the people who are coming here. It's just a little bit of practice, and it's safe. And I do remember And I was just trying to see if I could find any links here, but I remember being a young soccer mom and going to towns where you were required to back in. And when they came to Newton, they were really surprised that we didn't have to back in at the playgrounds and the parking lots around the fields, because they explained how much safer it was so that you wouldn't run over kids who were, you know, soccer players and younger siblings that were walking through the parking lot. And so they were just shocked that Newton hadn't adopted this in their field. So maybe this will start something and we'll start doing it everywhere. But, you know, I think this is a good place to start. And I think it will be much easier. I do have concerns if we didn't have this, that people backing out of the spaces would be backing into the bike lane. And where, you know, if you're backing up now, you're going to see the bike lane and try to avoid being in it, or you can at least see a bicyclist and time your, but if you're backing up blind, your cars coming through, and you might just back up very wide and back up into the bike lane, which I think will much more likely cause issues. So I think, and I am not also lastly concerned about the lack of right turn lane, you know, dedicated right turn lane at Albemarle and Crafts, because I just believe that, you know, that person, the driver who might come to the right of the person waiting to make a left is blocking the visibility for the driver making a left. So they're just slowing down. The majority of the traffic is looking to make a left. And so the occasional car that comes up to the right is just blocking visibility for the person looking to make a left. So I think it'll better function as a single lane there. And when we have light, we'll see what happens, you know. But anyway, and I do appreciate the effort of the city to look for other parking options, but I don't think 5 minutes for most people is a huge, is a huge ask. And I'm trying to remember the city, but there was a city planning where people were complaining about the loss of parking spaces in the downtown center. And the planner measured the distance from the middle of the Walmart parking lot to the back to the dairy case. And then took that same distance, how many feet it was, from the local pizza place, and then identified hundreds of parking spots. So the loss of a few parking spots for safety and for others, it's relative. People are willing to go to the Natick Mall and park far away and walk in. I just don't really understand why they can't park, 2 streets away and walk over to watch your kids play baseball. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I like to park as far away as possible. It drives my husband crazy.
Well, anything you can do to drive your spouse crazy is definitely a good deal.
I'm gonna go to Councilor Gentile, who hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, as far as being familiar with the site, it's I had 4 children go today, and over 50 years ago was a regular user as a participant in different sports myself, and been with my kids for multiple football, soccer, baseball, softball games. So I'm pretty familiar with what goes on at Albemarle. So I thought up until this point that this was a project that had an awful lot of support. And then I listened to Councilor Kelly and others, and Councilor Kelly talked about backing and parking, but she talked about another of issues that I think are very legitimate, and intimated, though she said she was just speaking for herself, that she's not the only one that shares those concerns. So I'll be anxious to hear what the other Ward 2 and Ward 3 councilors have to think. Because my question is if there's that many reservations, then I would hope that we would not go forward with a trial if there's that many reservations now, and ask that it be rethought. So I will be an interested participant as far as listening to hear what others say. I guess tonight we're being asked to approve this So when we do get to the vote, I guess I'll abstain and see what happens when it comes to the full council. But if there are as many serious objections as I'm hearing, not only from councilors, but from neighbors and so forth, I hope that we will listen. And even though I know it's only paint, that doesn't mean that we should go ahead and just see what happens. And then the only other thought I'm struck by is, maybe I missed it. We all know the importance and value safety, but there are things sometimes that you can do that make projects or areas less safe. And we have to be careful that we're confident that we're not doing anything like that. And were there some statistics that were provided as far as incidents with pedestrians or accidents, at least along the stretch of Albemarle Road? I'm not talking about going out to Craft Street or Watertown Street. I'm talking about, Albemarle Road on both sides itself. Were there some statistics provided to sort of make the case that it's extremely unsafe and we need to do something about it? Because if there were, I missed it. So anyway, as I said, I'll be interested to hear what how my colleagues vote, and if they, support going forward with it as it's currently designed.
Thank you, Councilor Kyle. Jason, do you want to comment on the safety issues? I know I spent some time observing the intersection with Councilor Downs and the Safe Routes to School, and it was very chaotic. And I believe the main goal of this is safety. And I know I got a number of complaints about frequent accidents there. Do you want to speak to that?
Josh, do you have those crash data?
I know that I've received them. I apologize that we didn't do that in the presentation. I think that was a reason that the city was awarded this grant, but I don't, I would just be quoting something from memory, and I don't know that that's meets your standards. So I'm happy to find that out. I just don't know that I could do it tonight. I want to say, like, a couple of dozen incidents over a 10-year period that were reported. I don't know how many of those were related to the intersections and how many were, in between the intersections. And I just don't want to mislead. So.
Okay, I do remember hearing from Councilor Downs, and as I would say, that there was quite a few outrageous crashes there. There was a lot of safety issues. So it would be good to have that data. So
for sure.
I'm going to go to Councilor Kalis and then to Councilor Laredo.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that I had questions initially and wanted to make sure that you were understood that there's a lot of education that's necessary, but I fully support what you're doing. I think you should stand your ground because I think it's the right thing to do. And, I spent many years driving my kids and coaching people there, and there were many near crashes that we had. And you're not going to satisfy everybody. If people want to park in a different way, there are plenty of other places to go park. You can't make sure everybody is skilled at parking in one way. I know my son, actually, who is 20, got his license and has never parallel parked since because he doesn't like doing it. So he looks around for a spot, which is crazy to me, but people need to learn how to drive. And so please, it is a lot better to go back in or head out, whatever you call it. And the other thing is, I have to admit, when I was at Albemarle and my kids were there, I would go in and I'd watch them playing soccer or baseball or wait for them from the swim team, and I'd leave my car running. I don't want any more of that. I've learned that's not a good thing. So I think that's another reason. It's a smaller reason, but it plays into it. So I think you're doing the right thing. I would stick with it.
Thank you, Counselor Kales. Counselor Laredo and then Counselor Bowman.
Sorry about that, Madam Chair.
No
Still no Wi-Fi, so I won't
okay.
belabor it. I heard Counselor Bowman mention other cities and towns in the greater Boston area which have this. I'm not aware of those, and I welcome the opportunity to be educated as to which specific community she's talking about, because I've been to lots of
Somerville,
others.
for
Pardon?
sure. Somerville, for sure. They do it. I've just noticed it there, for sure.
Yeah, but when I'm talking about the suburban cities and towns where our kids all travel to play soccer and lacrosse and other sports like that, a lot of those, I don't recall any of them having this. So if I can be educated, I'm very happy to be. Look, I think this is uncharted territory. I've done some quick internet research. There are a few communities that seem to do it, and they have very mixed reactions as to whether they're good enough. I stand by my concern that more junior drivers have a difficult time with this type of parking, and they also have a difficult time parking with parallel parking, which I think frankly is easier than this type of back-end parking. So I'll leave it at that. I am, however, quite concerned by the comments that my colleague from Ward 3 made about how the Ward 2 and 3 councilors all registered concerns about this, and those concerns seem to have been disregarded. Again, I don't want us to belabor the laudatory work, and laudatory is poor choice of words, really the good work that's being done here in a wide variety of ways to improve the safety situation, to improve traffic flow. I'm very glad to hear that the parking spaces will be 9 by 18, which is regulation, which I think is very important for an area where you're having multiple people get out of cars and sporting equipment and so forth. I'm not convinced on the angle parking. Gentile will abstain when it comes time to vote on this because I want to hear on the floor of the council what our colleagues from Ward 2 and Ward 3 have to say about it. And I would like to know why their views have been, I don't want to say disregarded, but overridden. Let's leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ray. Josh, could I just ask you, is there any timing issues related to this project? Does the grant have any strings attached to it or a schedule to it?
Thank you for that question, and I meant to respond earlier to when in responding to Councilor Kelly. We have to spend this money by December 31st, 2023. The grant of about $200,000, and the motivation to do it in August is to do it before school begins, knowing that it can be busy there. But these bolting in of the speed cushions and doing paint and flex posts, that is a matter of like I think a week-ish, not like a month. So and it can be staged, along the roadway, so as to not to close down, the entirety of both sides of the road. But we are, if this is to happen, I would request a vote tonight so that it could move forward, because I am very concerned about the timing. And I would just add, if I could beg your indulgence, that I would not interpret a favorable vote as without concerns or reservations. I would because yes vote is please proceed with this trial using state funding in order to test measures that we believe will improve safety, but it does not come without the need for like education and outreach and enforcement in order to make it, make it a success. It would be easier for me personally if you rejected it, because then I wouldn't have to do all this outreach. But then I'd be hearing a lot from parents upset about that we're putting their kids at risk. And I would just add one other thing. We debated at the staff level of whether to ask for something that is clearly within your committee's jurisdiction, speed cushions, of which I haven't heard many objections, or get your approval for the plan as a whole in the spirit of partnership. And we're asking for your approval of the plan as a whole, but I fully understand the concerns that I'm hearing and the need to make sure that this works well. And that's why I'm so committed to doing the outreach and education. But I don't take a yes if it's a yes as a, as anything other than a yes, but proceed with caution, just like you would pulling out of a stop parking spot.
Thank you very much, Josh, for your viewpoints on that and your recommendation. I'm just going to briefly weigh in and then go back to, I see there are more hands up. I think this is an important project and it's being driven by safety. And I think it will improve safety in this area. It is a pilot, it's a trial, changes can be made. I am convinced that the back end angle parking is safer from what I've read and the research I've done and from when I attended the meeting. I am also, when Mr. Yo talked about the new accessible bridge and parallel parking opportunities on the other side, that also made me think that would help with the mediating some of the parking issues. And of course, on evenings and weekends, we have the whole Ed Center parking. And I know that's far away. It'll probably be my favorite place to park, but that's also, there is a lot of available parking around. So I would actually encourage that we do approve it. And we can continue to have this discussion on the floor of the council if needed. But I think overall, it's a good project and I'm convinced that it will make it safer for our community, especially for pedestrians and kids going to school. So I'm going to go to Councillor Bowman and then Councillor Gentile and then Councillor Kelly.
So thank you very much. I'm just going to be brief and remind people that the goal here was not only to support safety in this one section of Albemarle, but was really to create a critical link between Washington Street and the river. And I don't know if I don't remember if when Mr. Ostroff was reviewing the plans, whether we highlighted much of that, but just south of, is that right? Am I going the right direction? Yeah, just south of Watertown Street, there's actually even a contraflow lane that will allow somebody to using the street network to go from Washington Street, connect over Watertown, down Albemarle, to continue to go obviously all the way to the river. So, these changes are really required in order to have, and we know if we have separated bike infrastructure, it's safer and it feels safer and then more people use it. So it's not just a feeling of safety, but it's actual safety, and it's the type of safety that we could expect to see a significant increase in the number of people biking. So it's good for the community. It reduces the number of people. You feel like your kids have a safe way to bike to practice. Maybe you don't have to drive them. If the family feels safe biking to Albemarle, then they don't have to drive to the pool and they can bike to the pool. So, I think all of this is an opportunity to reduce the parking demand there. So, I think that it's a good opportunity for us to try all these changes and to, hopefully, learn. We will learn from them. Hopefully it's all good and we find a way to make them permanent, but certainly I would hate to miss the opportunity to trial this critical biking link. And I know that all the counselors we all supported unanimously the idea of putting together a bike and pedestrian master plan 2 years ago or 3 years ago. This is a key piece of that, is creating this link along what's otherwise north and south of this, a pretty good way to bike. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Laredo, followed by Councillor Kelly. I'm sorry, Councillor Gentile. Did I say Laredo?
I'm done on this one, Madam Chair.
I must have been looking at your name. Sorry.
All right, I have a question just to make sure that I understand the trial correctly. Is the plan to have every parking space from Watertown Street to Craft Street to be back in parking only? Is that what the current plan is?
No, there would be spaces near NECP that would be parallel. and then the others would be back in angle parking. If you want, I'll be glad to show you the diagram again.
No, I don't want to take, I can check that out in the meantime. So, but roughly, other than down towards the Watertown Street end, everything else will be back in parking.
On the northbound side, correct.
All right, and if someone manages to front end park, is I assume there's enforcement? Are we talking about ticketing people?
Gonna punt that because I don't know the regulation, and nor whether there's fines associated with that. So I don't want to misspeak.
Well, I guess we don't need to know that tonight, but I for one would like to know for sure if that's what the plan is. I would think you're gonna have to enforce it somehow.
Yes.
And if we start getting calls from people who are extremely annoyed that not only that they have to back in, but because they got a ticket for not following it, I just would like to know that up front.
Sure. And they may well be covered by regulation. It's just that I don't have that.
All right, if we could get that information, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly and then Councillor Danberg.
Thanks, except for Councillor Kalis, who somehow managed to park backwards at the library. It would be really, really hard to pull your car front in at these angles. You really have to take it wide. They'll either be at 45 or 60 degrees heading the wrong way to front in. But I just have a quick clarification question for Josh, which didn't come up, I don't think, unless I missed it tonight, but I remember it from the previous ones. Those rubber speed humps, are those going to be removed in the winter?
Yes.
And then reinserted because they need new holes and slightly different locations in the spring. So they're not going to stay in the winter for those who are worried about what they experience on Grant Ave or whatever. On the other hand, it presents another complication about where they go in and how you fix the holes that were anyway. So yeah, okay. For everyone to know, those are coming up. And the other thing that didn't come up was that once NECP was in operation, they are directing their staff, because their parking lot is too small, to park on Brookside, which is right on the other side of Albemarle crossing Watertown. And that is a little bit of a conflict with the bikeway connection in the parking that you guys had planned. So just want to point that out to people. I'm sure it's all work outable, but it's a problem. The only other thing I want to say, let me lower my hand so you don't think I'm going to talk again, is I want to explain how I'm going to vote tonight. I don't want to vote against this, but I'm going to abstain, as some of my colleagues have said, because I feel like I'm talking for some other colleagues who are not here, and for almost all the residents I've heard from wards 2 and 3 who have not been in favor of this. But I'm open to hearing more. I'd like to hear it more when it goes to the full council, but I'm going to be abstaining on this tonight. I'm not going to be voting in favor of it, but I'm not going to be voting against it either.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly. Yeah, I am concerned a little bit about this time sensitive of this, and I think it deserves to have the other councillors weigh in as well. So I would like to move it out of committee.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we should vote on it tonight and get it to the full council.
Okay, Councillor Danberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been listening carefully to the comments. I hear the concerns. I'm glad to hear that, first of all, that it's a pilot, and that I'm also glad to hear that the spaces are going to be 9 feet wide. I think that's going to go a long way toward helping people, young drivers specifically, to negotiate backing up into these. I don't think it is going to be a hazard for young drivers to be backing in. I think it's just a skill that they need to learn. I see this as a safety issue. I think that it's safer to back in than it is to pull in and then have to back out. You either have to be careful on the way in or be very careful on the way out. And I think that that it's much safer when the driver has a better view of what's coming up the road. I also was thinking about when Counselor Gentile mentioned enforcement and would people pull in head first. I was thinking how hard it would be to get your car maneuvered around to actually get it in head first. But I suppose somebody would actually do that. I think we'd leave them alone and realize that it's a whole lot easier to back in than to
Like they probably went the wrong way up the street anyway.
Yeah, right. They probably went the wrong way up the street. So I'm going to support this tonight because I think we need to move it forward.
Thank you, Councilor Danberg. So if everyone could take their
Scared me there.
if everyone could take their hands down, I think I'd like to just make a motion. I'd like a motion to approve, and then I'd like to do it by the hand so we can count.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I understand what people just said about the difficulty of going in frontwards, but if there are times at Albemarle when it's not very crowded, and if there's, 3 or 4 spaces that are empty, you can just make a wide swing and go in. And I'm thinking more about those times and what we're going to do if people do that. That's all.
Yes, no, your point's well taken, Councilor Gentile. Okay, is there a motion to approve? Okay, Councilor Kalis made a motion to approve. So if you are in favor of approval, could you just raise your hand, please? Okay. I'm seeing, okay. 4 hands, 1, 2, 3, 4 hands are raised. Okay, and then we'll take our hands down. Any abstentions? And 3 abstentions. That's the committee. Okay, no nays. Okay, thank you very much. So, yes.
I'm so grateful for, just if I could just beg your indulgence one more moment. One of the great things about Newton is the passion and interest that people bring, the public and the council. And whether folks agree or have reservations or oppose, I really appreciate this input. It will make it better as we move forward. So I will follow up with other staff later on just process in terms of timing.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Crossley.
Thanks. I just have a question for clarification before we head into full council on this, which is what exactly we're voting on. And I hear and I appreciate that we are sharing the entire plan. And of course, we do all care that it works, but we're not actually required to vote on the whole plan, number one. But more importantly, we're not actually saying whether we feel this way or not. We're not voting for sure to have this head out parking because it's a trial. I mean, the idea is to test it, to do trainings, to see how it goes. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of adjustments between now and even painting the stripes and so forth, to perfect the plan. So I just want to make sure that we all understand where we are in this process. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. We're just looking for approval on the roadway infrastructure improvements. It is a pilot, and Josh has made it clear that he's willing to work with us and make changes and modifications as needed. That's my understanding. If anyone else has a different understanding, they can let me know. Councilor Laredo, is your hand up? Or did you forget to take it down?
I certainly forgot to take it down. I'm done.
Okay.
Sorry.
Councilor Bowman, did you have a final comment?
Maybe it would be helpful I know that there are items that need to be approved by traffic council. If Jason or Josh could highlight what those are.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Bowman. From a traffic council perspective, this area of Albemarle that has been the focus of the discussion between Watertown and Craft Street is under a traffic council trial currently, which we did in anticipation of this project and also in anticipation of needing to make changes to accommodate staff and parent pickup drop off at NECP when that opened earlier this year. So that trial is an ongoing trial. The other item which will need to go through traffic council is the block of Brookside Ave, south of Watertown, between Watertown and what I'll call Albemarle eastbound, right? Because that leg of Albemarle runs between Eddy Street and Brookside. That one block, it's about 400 feet long, is one-way northbound, and traffic council would need to change the regulation to say one-way except bicycles, as we've done in a handful of other locations.
So just to confirm that, so they're saying you need to update the trial that exists today that was put in place. So does that mean that elements like the angled in parking, is that going to be something that the traffic council has to approve, the direction, or not?
I think that is a question that we will need clarity on, probably from the law department. The traffic council and the TPR historically has always indicated areas of angled parking, but does not get into the specificity of engineering details of what that angle is. So the area that we are talking about, between Crafts and Watertown, except for the portion right by NECP with parallel parking where the roadway is a little bit narrower. The existing regulation on the books is already angled parking, and I think we would need clarification from the law department. But in any case, this area, as I mentioned, is already under that traffic council trial.
Okay, that helps clarify. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, so both Josh and Jason, I'm sure this is going to be discussed on second call before the city council. So it would be, I just want to make sure that we're prepared to answer the questions that have been raised thus far, and also anticipate questions from the rest of the city councilors who may not be known that much about this project. Okay,
Yes.
so I will be in touch with you about that.
Great.
Okay, we only have, if there's no further comment or question, we just have one more item. It's just a reappointment. Should only take a minute. Jason, Josh, thank you so much for your work on this project.
Really appreciate the discussion. Thank you so much, counselors.
Thank you.
And Jason, thank you. We'll talk.
So number 135-23 is the reappointment of Robert Hansco to the Design Review Committee. And that's for a term to expire on December 31st, 2023. Seems kind of a short term. Councillor Kelly.
I would be happy to make a motion to approve Robert Hanasco back to the Design Review Committee when you're ready for that motion.
Okay, thank you very much. I know you're on the Design Review Committee yourself and have been for 30 years.
I've been very impressed with him, which is why I'm happy to move for his reappointment.
Okay, so Councillor Kelly's made a motion to approve Mr. Hansco. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, thank you very much. That's our business for this evening. Everybody have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Adjourned.
Thanks so much.
Good night.